So we've got two players. One is an NBA champion, two-time MVP, finals MVP, and the other is a top player in the league that doesn't have any of those accolades. So quick question, which of those two is the better buy? Because the obvious answer is the guy with all the hardware. But in reality, the market is sometimes paying more for the guy that doesn't have all of those accolades. And the reason for that is that people can be irrational. The markets are going to be irrational. Logic tells us one guy is the buy, but when we look at the data, we actually see that, hang on a sec, potentially the other guy is the better buy. So what I'm going to walk you through in this video is my 3-step process that I use to compare different players' markets and determine which is the better buy. So what's going on here? Like, is the market wrong, or is there stuff behind the curtain that we're not seeing, and is there value that we're not spotting because we're not looking for it? Okay, so this is my exact 3-step process. I never let just the price be the only data point that I look at because it doesn't tell the whole story. I look at 3 different things on every single player and card. I call it MLD. I'm going to show you the entire model. I'm going to run these 2 players through it, and by the end, you're going to see which one I'd actually buy into. And I'll show you the sorts of rookie cards of theirs that I'm buying into, and it's not the high tier premium ones. So let's dive in. Here's the whole system. So the 2 players that we're looking at, SGA and Luka Doncic. Okay, we know SGA, finals MVP, 2-time MVP, NBA champion. Luka, top player in the league, but he doesn't have any of those accolades. But when we look at their markets, like I said earlier, sometimes people pay more for a Luka Doncic rookie card than they do an SGA rookie card. And when we look at that, we go, but hang on a sec, why is that the case? You know, is it personal preference that's coming in? Is it something else? But the process that I'm going to walk you through, we can use for any players that we want to compare. And even if we don't want to compare, if we're just looking at one of these players or any player, and we want to go, hey, is this a good buy for me? This is the process that I walk through in order to determine if it is or not. And the shift in perspective that you need to have here is that the majority of people will determine a card's value and whether they should buy in or not off one number. They look at what it's selling for right now. And yes, that number is real, but it's the market's current mood on that player, not the actual player and card's worth. Because the market and the people in it will pay a premium for branding, for a story, for a narrative around it, for a moment in time. And they'll be dead right on what is popular right now, but they'll completely miss whether this player's market is built to last or if there's room for it to continue running and increasing. So the first thing that we need to have a discussion about and get clarity on is what actually is a better buy. Because what's a better buy for me and which of these players is a better buy for me is not the same as what is a better buy for you or a better buy for somebody else. It comes down to what our goal is. Personally, as I've got here, a better buy for me is higher profit margins and the chances of those profit margins actually happening. So that is the frame that I'm running this through. When I make a decision at the end of this, after I've looked at both of these players and compared them through the MLD process, the one that I'm going to make a decision on at the end of the day is the one that I believe is going to have better profit margins for me in the future, because that is the fuel for the business. It is the oxygen of the business. If I buy into one of these players' markets and there's little to no profit on the end of it, then that is a bad choice on my end, because it's not going to allow us to bring in more capital that we can reinvest and continue to grow and scale the business. So this is the first step, and this is something that you need to decide before you buy into any card. You need to say, what is my goal? What am I hoping to achieve here? Because for some people, it's going to be, I want to build a collection that I love, and that is fantastic. For some people, it's 50-50, beautiful. But then you need to say, for this individual card, is this for the PC and the heart, or is this for the business and the head and the profit coming from it? So that's the first thing that I need to get out of the way so that you can shift your perspective and get in the same frame of mind as I am here as we dive into this. So the 3-step process, as I said, MLD, market, legacy, design. So we're going to look at both of these players, and we're going to look at their markets. We're going to look at the legacies that they have and the projected legacy in the future. And then we're going to look at card designs so that we can figure out which ones do we want to buy into, which ones do we want to leave, and why. So the thing that you need to understand here is that the market gets you interested. The design makes sure that you pick the right cards, but when both players and cards have a healthy market, legacy is often the tiebreaker. But that's both the current legacy and the projected legacy and the chances of the player actually creating that legacy. Because the smartest thing legacy tells you isn't who's won more. It's what's already baked into the player's current market. Okay, so let me show it to you, because on market and design, SGA and Luka look the same, but legacy completely separates the two of them. Okay, so when it comes to the market, we're looking at the health of the player's market right now, and we're looking at trends over the entirety of their careers, the last 90 days, the last 30 days, so that we can get a gauge for what is their market index like? What's their market cap like? Okay? What's their market volume like? What's their market pricing like? What's the narrative around the player? What's the narrative around the team? And what's the overall market sentiment towards these players? So when I do this, again, I love to use card ladder. So I have Luka up here and I have SGA up here. When we look at Luka, we can see that his index, it's only hit at its peak, let's call it 16,500. Okay? And when we look at his volume, we have a market cap of 110 million. We have a daily high of 141,000. We have an average daily volume of 25k, and we have a low daily volume of 1.2k. Okay? We have a total of 732 cards in Luka's market, with a low value of 869, so that's below the starting value. The high of this 16.5, an average of 6,500. So we look at this and we go, okay, so Luka's got great volume, incredible volume, great liquidity, great pricing. But when we look at his index and his overall market health, we're actually down. Okay? That's an interesting sign. It hasn't ever really gotten that high, especially when we compare it to SGA. Because we can see here that SGA's highest was 34,500. Low value was around the same. Okay? Only 163 cards compared to Luka's 732, and the average value, because it's higher, is 21,000 compared to 6.5. When we look at the volume though, only a $50 million market cap for SGA, likely due to the lower total cards. Average daily volume of 19,000 versus 25, a low of 264 versus 1,200, and a high of 410 versus 141. So we can start to see here that this likely high daily volume and also this rate of growth is likely due to the second part of this system, which is the legacy. But what I want to look at here is I want to just have a quick squiz and compare some cards so that I can start to get a feel for what are the comparisons in these prices like right now. So let's take, it's a Ruby Wave, here we go. Rookie Silver Prism in a PSA 10 for SGA. Last sold was 3,700. When we come across to Luka and we go to find that same card, Silver Prism, last sold for 2,400. Okay, population is 2,500. On the SGA, the population is a heck of a lot lower. So therefore, these are more scarce and rarer as well. But we can see $2.68 million market cap, $5.87 million market cap, again, reflected by the population. But the pricing is around, $1,200, $1,300 difference. So we're seeing that SGA's market is currently more expensive than Luka's, and that makes sense. So when we look at the market index, we look at the market cap, the volume, and the pricing for both players, we can start to get an understanding of where their market health is at. What is really, really, really interesting about this though, let me close both of these and have a look at, hey, what's happened to their markets over the last 3 months? So the last 90 days. Well, with SGA, we shot up at the end of July towards the start of August. We went from 32,500 up to almost 35,000. So we're back up at the top, okay? SGA, they didn't win the championship this year. He won another MVP, but this happened after all of that. So there was an event here that has caused his market index and value to increase. When we look at his volume, it stayed relatively low with one spike on July 24th, which happens to coincide with this going back up. And this sale, there was $124,000 of volume go this day, which likely meant that this price went back up. When we look at Luka over that same time period, this is where it gets really interesting from my standpoint of which is the better buy in regards to which has the better profit margin. Same time point, Luka's gone down 6.5% compared to SGA going up 6.5%. And he's at his current top. Okay? Luka is nowhere near the current top of his all-time market. He's currently at a little over 6,000, a little under 6,000, where the top of his market's been 16.5. For SGA, like I said, we're right back up there. So I start to take that into account as well. Now when I look at player narratives and team narratives, so the team narrative around OKC, the expectations are set. It's finals or bust. It's championship or bust. They've made some moves this off-season. Lou Dort's gone, which means AJ Mitchell and Jared McCain will get more time. Aaron Wiggins is gone. Isaiah Joe's gone. But they still have a tremendous roster. All the core pieces are there. Jalen Williams is likely going to be healthy this season. He had the injuries last season. So we're looking at all of that and we're going, hey, team narrative around OKC, if they don't achieve, well, they're not going to have met expectations. And that's the market's expectation of them. They should be playing the Spurs in the Western Conference Finals for a spot to go through to the NBA Finals. When we look at the player narrative around SGA as well, he has solidified as a top 2 to 3 player in the league. It's him, it's Wemby, and it's Jokic. So that's already baked in. We know that the market loves them. Okay? When we look at market sentiment, some of the things that I like to look at are shoe sales. So we know that he went from Converse across to Nike. Okay, we've got some Lukas in here. So we're just starting to get a vibe for what the culture is like and what the overall market sentiment is like. Okay, bestsellers, another jar. There's a Luka. I know that this is Nike only and SGA isn't there yet. But we can see that here on the Nike site, Luka has 1, 2, 3, 4 in the top. What's that? 6, 10. 4 in the top 10 is Luka. So we can look at this and we can say that the market sentiment towards Luka, and we can also look at jersey sales here, is that in the culture of basketball, people love Luka and they also love SGA. Okay, so the sentiment is very healthy towards both players. Looking at jersey sales would also be interesting here to be like, hey, who's got the bigger international market? Because that opens up who we can sell to in the future. But these are the things that I'm looking at market-wise. The biggest thing for me is this drop in the last 3 months. Hell, even in the last 6 months. Okay, when I compare both of these and I'm thinking about who has better runway, who's got a market that has more potential to increase and why, I start to lean towards Luka because of this cool down. We know that the volume's there. Okay, you can see here multiple days we've hit above $100,000 in trading volume. There's not as many here for SGA. That's a 102. So there's only really these 3 days compared to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but a lot more mid-volume days as well. So they're the things that I really start to factor in. Then when I look at legacy, because I've gone, okay, both players' markets are healthy. I am leaning more towards Luka right now because of that cool down and the potential for there to be an increase in the future. Because now when I look at legacy, we have finals MVP, we've got NBA champion, and we've got 2-time MVP already factored into SGA's market. If he goes out and wins another MVP, cool. Like in the long term, it's going to mean more to his market than it will in the short term. If he wins another championship, the current state of the NBA, okay, that's actually a really good signal. But again, if Luka goes and wins a championship, which is potential, even though it's less likely, there's going to be a much bigger increase in his market. The same for an MVP. He was in MVP conversations last season before he got injured. So the potential is there. And what I'd be looking to buy into is that potential. Because the projected future legacy events for Luka, MVP, Finals MVP, Western Conference MVP, NBA champion, they all haven't happened yet. And personally, I believe that they are possible. So that is what I would be buying into if I chose Luka over SGA, because the prices haven't been baked into the market yet. Okay? And both of these players are potentially going to go to the Hall of Fame. But again, that's in the future. So we're looking, as I said, once again, legacy events and accomplishments that have already been achieved, a lot more for SGA than for Luka, but then also the projected future legacy events. Okay, so they're things that I take into consideration and I think about here, because this is also the long-term stability of the players market and the potential runway for increase in the players market. So they're the two things that I'm thinking about. SGA is the safer option right now because that legacy is baked in. Because Luka has more risk involved, there's more reward on the back end of it in the short term, the mid term, and potentially the long term. Where SGA, long term, he's going to go on, potentially win more accolades, build more legacy because he's still so young. But that's only really going to have an effect for periodic spikes in the market of when they happen, and longer term, he's going to become even more of a blue chip to have and to hold. So therefore, the third one that gets us to is the card design. Different sets and different cards from those sets will have different demand, liquidity, and prices. I've told you about this story before where I bought a ton of Victor Wembanyama rookie cards, and all of them except one sold for great profit and in a very short amount of time. And the reason is that one card, it was a poor design. Yes, it was a Wemby rookie card. Yes, it was a parallel, but it was an NBA hoops card. And at the time, I just thought, hey, it's Wemby, that's going to carry this. But it didn't, because it was a low-tier set. Even though it was a parallel, even though it was a rookie, even though it was Wemby, because it was low-tier, people had all of these other choices, so that is where demand and the money flowed into. So my neon green NBA hoops Victor Wembanyama rookie card consistently sat at $90, and I ended up selling it at $90 for like a $5 profit. Cool, but it would have been better to invest that into another set, into a better card design, which had faster liquidity and more profit behind it. So that's what we're looking at here. So the things that we take into account here are the current price point. We take into account the set. Is it low tier? Is it mid tier? Is it high tier? Is it premium? So the low tier, when I look at it, it's typically NBA hoops. It's Mosaic. It's Select. It's Donruss. The mid tier are your Prisms, your Obsidians, Origins, and then we get up into the National Treasures, the Immaculates, and those sorts of things. Then I look at the tags. And this is why I'm a huge proponent of the dashboard, because every card that gets bought gets given these tags. And then what I find when I look at my fastest sellers and my most profitable cards are that they have 3 or more of these tags. So they're either an RPA that's numbered and of a specific player archetype, they're a numbered auto, they might be a case hit that's numbered, they might be a parallel that's numbered. So they need to have 3 or more tags in order for me to buy in, unless it's a player where I know that, hey, if it's just a numbered parallel of this player, it's going to sell. But oftentimes, if it's 3+ tags, it's 100% yes. Otherwise, it comes into the player archetype and that player's current market and demand at this present point in time. So I'm looking at all of these and going, okay, is this the right card for me to buy into? Because the player's market has shown the right signs. I'm happy with either their current legacy or their projected future legacy. And I'm happy with the price point that this card is at based on what the price is right now, based on what the average has been, based on what the all-time has been, based on what the off-season has been, looking at all of those different price points. I'm happy with the set. It has either the tags that I want for a specific player, or it's got 3 or more tags. Yes, I'm going to buy in and bite the bullet. So when it comes to these two players, like I said, which is the better buy for me? For me, it's Luka. And as I said, the reason for that is both players' markets are healthy. The card designs, they're both from 2018, so the card designs are very similar. But for me, the tipping point is that Luka's legacy has not yet had really anything created inside of it. He's just one of the top 5, top 10 players in the league right now, one of the best offensive players, one of the best playmakers. So I would be buying in on the belief and the potential that the MVP conversation comes, that the NBA Finals appearance and potential championship comes. Like, that gap is the edge. Because when we come back and we look at SGA's market, I simply go, what is it that causes this to continue to go up? And right now in the short term, I'm not too sure. Like, I know that the demand is going to be there and the liquidity is going to be there, but my goal at the end of the day is that profit margin. So unless I can get an SGA rookie card at an incredibly great price, 100% I'm going to buy it because the profit margin is going to be there. But if I'm looking at who I'd rather take a larger position in, being okay with the risk, it's Luka because of this drop in his market index, knowing that the volume is there and knowing that the demand and the liquidity and the potential for future pricing is still there as well. So specifically, what I am looking at when it comes to Luka and when it comes to SGA, personally, the sets that have moved best for us are Prism and Optic. The rated rookies move tremendously well, and so do any sort of Silver Prism or Prism Parallel. And as you can see here, Optic rated rookies at the moment doing around $50, the Don Russ doing around $30. If I come through and I have a look at what these did, at the back end of last season, as we can see in June here, a $52 sale on the Don Russ compared to a $30 sale on the Don Russ. So that's a $22 profit. 64, 58 in May, so that's even more. So this is a reflection of where Luka's market will likely get back to when he's healthy and when it gets to the back end of the season. And here we are in April, we have 116 on the Optic compared to 50 on the Optic. So again, the potential increase there on Luka, when I look at that, is really nice when it comes to profit margins. And if we look at prisms, let's find ourselves a raw silver. Okay, that's just a base prism, 78. Where we can see back here in February, 92, 120 compared to 78. And if we look at the silver, okay, we've got $500 in July, 337. And here in March, silver prism, 762 compared to we have 504 and 337. So again, silver prisms, other prism parallels, rated rookies, Optic or Don Russ, and the parallels there. Current off-season pricing right now compared to last season, the profit margins are really nice. And we know that rated rookies and prisms have good liquidity for us based on what we track in the dashboard. Okay, so as I said, SGA's market is the steady hold. But Luka's market is asymmetric because all of those legacies and those accolades aren't priced into his market yet. So if any of those things land, that's where demand and attention and value increase for Luka. And personally, because my goal is profit margins, I'd rather own the upside that isn't factored in yet and I have belief is going to be there compared to the card where all of that is already baked in. So here is that whole three-step system in one line. Market tells you what a card is valued at. Design gives you an insight into which sort of sets and cards to buy. And legacy shows you the projected growth of that player's market should those events happen. Okay, so legacy isn't necessarily just about who's won more. It's about what's already baked into that player's market. SGA's legacy is already baked in. It's the safer play. Luka's the opposite. It's riskier, but if some of those things happen, well, that is where the increase comes from. And that's just two players. I do this entire thing on the whole NBA and MLB rookie card each week. My entire watch list of who I'm buying, who I'm watching, who I'm selling, the entire market narrative, player movements over the last 7 and 14 days, so that people can have their finger on the pulse of the NBA and MLB rookie card markets. It's the entire market intelligence and analysis that I do for myself and use here at Rookie Heat AU. I gift people the latest free issues so that they can experience for themselves. And if now is the right time for them to start receiving it weekly, then they can subscribe and also get free access to the vendors table where we all connect, discuss moves, ask questions, and I share special intel pieces and other business systems during the week. And if now is not the right time for them, then they still get the free issue every single week, which is just a watered down version of the Rookie Heat Sheet. Okay? And I want to be clear, the Rookie Heat Sheet is simply my read on the market. It's not financial advice. It's just the data that I am looking at and using to make our choices on what we're buying into, what we're exiting, and the positions that we're taking on specific players and cards and their markets in the short-term and long-term future. Okay, if you want the latest full issue for yourself to read through, link is in the description below. And if you want the shorter versions, follow us at rookieheat_AU on Instagram, where I'm sharing my reads on certain players and different business growth systems to grow your sports card business and be more profitable. And in the next video, I'm going to give you my actual buy list, okay, who I'm looking at for this upcoming NBA season and the MLB players that I'm looking at for these end of season catalysts. Okay, you'll be introduced to the 5 different player tiers, and you'll see which 2 is where the actual profit lives and how each of those different player tiers has a different frame around them and a reason to buy into. That's it for today, guys. As always, appreciate you tremendously. Thank you for being here with me. Thank you for being here with us. If you're finding value from this, please subscribe to the channel so you never miss a video. I'll see you on the next one.